Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We've got Transform Your Cemetery Operations to Serve Your Clients More Effectively with Axiom Cemetery Management. We're going to let people log in for just about 30 more seconds, so bear with us and we will be right back with you. Thank you. Looks like we have a couple more people logging in, so I'll just give it a couple more seconds. All right, thank you again for joining us today. Again, it's Transform Your Cemetery Operations to Serve Your Clients More Effectively with Axiom Cemetery Management. We're joined today by Joel Wright. He will be our presenter, and I'm Melissa Waters. I'm the Manager of Events and Programs at Axiom and JMT Consulting. I wanted to go through a couple of housekeeping notes, and then I will let Joel take it away. If you have any questions at all during this presentation, there is a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen that you can submit those questions to. There's also a chat feature as well that you're welcome to use. We are recording this webinar, and we will send you a copy of that recording as well as the slides, usually by the end of the day, if not tomorrow morning. And with that, I will turn it over to Joel. Thank you.
Thanks, Missy. I do have a question, actually, Missy. I should have asked you before, but near the end, is it possible to unmute folks?
Yeah, I can try.
Okay. Well, I ask because last time the questions were coming through, and I think somebody had a technical difficulty. So would love to hear from you, each of you that have attended today. Appreciate you taking the time. I'll also say that the last time I did one of these, I went to a couple of minutes over, so I'm going to try and be much better at that. I have my phone here, and I'm going to keep track of time. So, if I get close, Missy, just let me know, and I'll stop talking. But if folks want to stick around and the Q&A happens to go a little bit longer, feel free to drop off if you'd like, or stick around. Truly, what we want this 30 minutes to be is very educational for you. Ideally, I want you to take away a couple of things that each of you could do at your own cemeteries, just to simply audit, your processes and see if there's a better way of doing things. So this ideally should be educational. You should have some takeaways. If not, we love candid feedback. So good, bad, ugly, whatever it may be, please let us know how we did, because we are constantly trying to raise the bar and make sure that we know your schedules are busy, and we want to make sure that the 30 minutes you take out of your day to spend with us are the best possible. So transform your cemetery operations to serve your clients more effectively is what we're going to talk about. And we got it. So what we want to talk about is why would you make a change and what a solution could look like, and hear from you. I would love to hear some of the things that you're doing at your cemeteries. But to kick things off, I wanted to just briefly go through Axiom and JMT. If you've been in the cemetery industry for a while, it's very likely that you've heard of Axiom. If you've gone to any cemetery conferences, you've most likely heard of Axiom. They've been around for 20 years, over 20 years, providing a cemetery management solution. Most of you probably have not heard of JMT, so I just wanted to clarify if any of you are curious. JMT acquired Axiom at the beginning of this year, which was a great time to do an acquisition, obviously, with this year and everything that's gone by, this weird start of a decade, but it's been phenomenal. And the way the two companies were introduced is also very interesting. The JMT CEO, Jackie Mtiso, hence JMT, it's her initials, was introduced to the founders and owners of Axiom at a conference through a mutual connection. And through that discussion and that original meeting, there was just a lot of good synergy between the two companies as far as the culture, the missions. Axiom has been around providing great technology to their clients, but truly their mission was to make sure that their clients were providing a better service, or a more efficient service to individuals that are going, or families that are going through the toughest times of their lives. It's about the why. Why are we doing this? And the owners of Axiom were very passionate about that. And at JMT, we've always been very passionate about nonprofit organizations and making sure that they're using the best technology out there to better impact their communities and the people they serve, and also their employees. And so there was just great commonality between the two organizations. Whenever JMT reviewed Axiom, we realized quickly that their technology is great within the cemetery industry. It's got a very good track record. And a really cool thing is that Axiom was based in Melbourne, Australia. The folks that owned it were from Australia, started it, and now we and they have clients both in Australia, all across the globe, in the US. And so today, after the acquisition, all of the folks with Axiom are still there. We're all operating under JMT. And now what's really neat is that each one of our clients gets a 24-hour, 6-day-a-week service window. Since Australia kicks off the day, they're 9 hours behind me here in Dallas, Texas. They kick off the day, and once they're closing up the day, the folks here in the US are able to kick off. So JMT has locations now in New York, in Nashville, Austin, and Melbourne, Australia. So it's really unique, and it's a great benefit to our clients because the response time and the ability to service them is superior to that you could find with other vendors, and we're very excited about it. So what we really want to cover today is, if you want to transform anything within your organization, you really got to kind of understand where you're at right now. And at JMT, we've gone through this exercise with thousands of organizations of trying to make a business case as to why it might make sense to make any change. And the process is fairly simple, but it's also very fun. So usually what we do to kick that process off is to truly map out what your current situation looks like. Once you identify what that looks like, you're going to find things that you like, and you're going to find things that you think you could improve on. Those issues, what you want to do, or things that you could improve on, you want to try and identify what the impact of those issues are, and create some sort of monetization of, how much is this costing us? And once you truly understand those things, then you get a better image as to why it might make sense to make a change. What we like to work with our clients on is truly identifying what the ideal solution would look like. So truly, in a perfect world, what would our cemetery look like, and how will it run and operate? So what I want to do today is just go through some common things that we find. And I'm going to continue to say you, and I don't mean it personally to you. It just means it's my way of speaking, and it is hypothetical, and somebody that is a cemetery that has these issues. But for you personally, some of these may or may not touch home. So I apologize for my grammar, but that's just the way I talk, I guess. But so anyway, some common issues that we find are listed here. The number one that we find with cemeterians is the paper record keeping. And if there was a pyramid of issues, this tends to be the top, and everything kind of funnels down below it. So that may or may not touch home for you. If you want to share, if that's not the case, I'd love to hear it, maybe in the chat function. But cemeteries have been around for decades or hundreds of years. And if you think just 40 years ago, systems and process, digitization of records just wasn't achievable. And if your cemetery is 60 years old, then it clearly started with having to maintain and manage records with paper, and that's just what was available. So The fact that a lot of cemeteries are having to rely on manual paper record keeping is not a surprise to anybody. But what we got to identify is that today is 2020, right? And again, I hate saying 2020, but we're now in a new decade, and technology is completely different than what it was even 5 years ago. And there's certainly better ways of doing things. So, with paper record keeping, some of these other issues. So maybe you don't have confidence with your burial records. If you have a filing cabinet of paper burial records and you happen to lose one of those, over the decades that you've been in business, and it happens, there's not really an ability to report on paper records, right? So the visibility of your cemetery operations is limited because everything from a data perspective is kept on a paper document that you just can't export and report and do those sorts of things. We have a client in New York that has just been a very heavily involved client, because unfortunately they were impacted through Hurricane Sandy and lost several of their records through a flood, and it had to go through a very tedious and stressful process of having to audit their entire cemetery and recreate those records. The cemetery was a couple hundred years old, and so Mother Nature, weather is changing, and it just seems to be more and more fierce each year, and things are happening, whether it's fire, flood, what have you. Having that paper record is just a risk on the organization. And it's also, if you do have some sort of computerized system, if you're using some sort of system, understanding that your network is in a good place. There's hackers, there's ransomware, there's all these external risks that are available out there. So making sure that your data is safe and secure and a good network and server is super important. And tracking assets. So, if you have paper records, you're not very confident in your burial records, and that lack of confidence exists, then you may have folks that are interred in places that they weren't supposed to be interred. You may have equipment that you're not tracking appropriately. Whatever it may be, you may have inventory you didn't know about. So all these things are common issues that we come across. And so I didn't look at the chat feature. I'm just curious, any of you have any feedback on this or comments? Does this touch home for any of you? I'll carry on to the next slide. Feel free to pop it in there. I should get an update. So once you understand what these issues are, the next step is to truly understand how they're affecting your cemetery. So if you have folks interred in a place that they're not supposed to be, and believe me, this may not be an issue for you, but I come across it quite a bit talking to, cemeteries. They just say, look, I'm not confident that everybody's in the right place according to our record keeping. If that was to ever come to light and a family understands that their loved one isn't buried where they were supposed to be, then they may, end up suing the cemetery, which we know attorneys are expensive, lawsuits are expensive. There's bloggers everywhere today, whether it's Yelp or whatever platform they have to review, they're going to do it, and they tend to do it generally whenever it's a very bad experience. And so, that could impact your brand, the word of mouth for other families to utilize your cemetery. If you're not confident in your burial records, there's potential lost revenue because there's more inventory than what you thought of, or vice versa. Maybe there's not enough inventory. If you're having to rely on paper records, then employees generally don't want to deal with that, and it may be stressful, especially today, whenever a lot of organizations are restricted to how many employees they could have on site, just through COVID and everything that's happening. So if you're using manual processes, you have to be on site to do those. And it could be stressful because individuals may be taking on more than what they used to, and that could lead to employee turnover, which hiring and training is very costly for organizations. So putting a dollar amount to that, time lost on manual processes, All of these things are just examples of issues and how you could monetize those. Any questions on this or any thoughts? Does this touch home for any of you?
Just a reminder to everyone, there's a chat feature and a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen that you can submit to Jill's questions.
Yeah, thanks, Missy. Okay. Well, so in exercise, you've identified what your issues are, you've created an impact, and now you have more or less an understanding to what a solution may change and what it should bring to your organization. So truly what you would be doing at that point is mapping out what your ideal solution would look like. So if you're dealing with paper processes, then trying to identify how could we solve that. If it's auditing your records, whatever it may be, then you try and figure out, okay, what in the perfect world, how could this look? And so what I wanted to speak to briefly is just what the Axiom solution can bring to the table. And using those previous issues that we commonly find, how Axiom is able to help solve those issues and create that better experience for cemeterians. So I'm just going to move the chat box here. So Axiom is truly an end-to-end system for cemeteries, whether you have a funeral home, if you're doing cremations, for your marketing and sales department, if you're doing campaigns, there's a digital mapping component. All of it is a single solution, which is very powerful because if you were to make a change in any part of the system to an individual record, it is then reflected through the entirety of the system. And so whenever you're talking about just paper processes in general, since this is a system, ideally we're gonna convert those paper records to a digital format and place them in this database that will allow for each of you and your employees to have access to this wherever they may be. It's both laptop, tablet, and mobile friendly. So you could pull all of this information up. So if you're restricted to have to work from home, you're not limited in how you could do your work whenever and however. So it's very customized according to each cemetery, but this is a simple kind of look in a visual format of everything that encompasses Axiom. To give you a more detailed look at it, just from a departmental perspective, it truly encompasses your finance, accounting, your operations, your grounds crew, your family services, so sales, from looking at just the lifeline of a lead to an opportunity to a client to a deed to a pre-need to an at-need, that entire cycle of a client is maintained, from work orders, of opening up the site or, the cremation aspect of it to the burial, the service, and, if there's perpetual care or anything along those lines, all of it could be, tracked within the system. And so what's really neat about that is that since everything is living within the system, you can then begin to report on it and get more key metrics that are important to your cemetery. And if you're like me and you're not necessarily a numbers person looking at, Excel spreadsheets and financial reports or whatever, organization may be as an output, this visualization of data in a dashboard is just a much easier way to see key information that's important to you. And each one of these could be customized to department heads or individuals within your organization, so that way they could see information that's relevant to them. So if it's, your sales manager and they want to see how many new clients you got within a given time period, or how many opportunities are out there, or, if you want to forecast what your pipeline looks like, since you're creating these opportunities within the system, you could do that. We collect historical information, so you could do, kind of your budgeting and forecasting much better. If you're the cemetery owner and you just want to see how many burials, or kind of a snapshot of just the financial health of your organization, then you could see all of these things. And again, they're all customizable, but just getting better information at your fingertips that is truly real time, because since you are making changes in the system, it's all impacted real time. So these numbers that you're looking at aren't in the rears. It's all available in real time as you're changing it within the system. One of the big things within every cemetery is just having a very accurate and user-friendly mapping tool that you can look at your cemetery from a bird's eye view and be able to kind of shrink down and see where all your sites are located and what the status of those sites are. Axiom has that tool. As you can see here on the bottom right, it's color-coded, so you can see which ones have already been interred, which ones are pre-sold, what's available. You could reserve sites. So if you're a sales rep, let's say you're working on, with family services, and a family comes in, you could pull up the map, you could see what's available, you could take them out to the grave site, you could have your tablet in your hand. If they're interested, you could reserve it. So I don't know if you see down here, there's some yellow plots. So, if there's other sales reps that may be looking at the same site, you don't have confusion or potentially double selling an individual location. Directly from the map, you could, if they say, yeah, I like this map, Missy, let's go on ahead and buy this one. They could, Missy could then, go on ahead and create the order. Could be sent to finance. You could have your price book automatically loaded within the system, create that quote, have your client sign the quote on the tablet and collect payment, and it's done. So literally everything could be, the entire process could be digitized and placed within the system. There's tools like kiosks. So as much as we love human intervention and talking to people and creating that personal relationship, if people are going to see a loved one, they may or may not want to talk to somebody. And so a kiosk, you can think of it like going to the mall and trying to find out where Macy's is at. It's the same thing, only Macy's could be a loved one, right? And you want to figure out where your loved ones are interred at. So you could come to your location, have a kiosk available for them. They could type in the name and it will show them exactly where their plot is located. And there's a map that would allow for them to go on ahead and walk directly to their grave. There's an external component on your cemetery's website that you could list all the services that are happening that day. So, folks want to see when their loved one's going to be, when the service is going to occur, and where it's located. They could come to your website and see all those services and be able to pull it up and see the map and go on ahead and get directions to that gravesite. It's all GPS located, so it gives the exact coordinates of where that's at. So again, these are external tools that provide your clients a better experience. They just have access to knowing what's going on easier. They don't have to pick up the phone and call somebody, even though they still may. They have all these resources available that they could just go and figure out what's going on directly from their website. A deceased search, with all these new tools out there, Ancestry.com or whatever it may be, there's individuals that are very curious about their family tree, and there's also individuals that just want to go visit some loved ones, and being able to pull that up from a website, see exactly who's buried at your cemetery and see where they're buried is just a very convenient tool for external folks that are looking at your cemetery. So this is another thing that could be outlay on your website and give individuals more access to what's going on and who's buried at your cemetery. So I spoke about walk to the grave, and whenever I say that, it's literally a walk to the grave or directions to the location. So it integrates directly with Google Maps. So if you were to say, show me the map or show me the location, it will then pull up Google Maps on your phone, and it'll give you the exact directions and location of where they're at. So it's really neat and convenient tools and resources. So these are just, again, these are things that exist today. This may or may not be your ideal solution, but as far as what Axiom tools are able to provide, and if we're looking at those issues that we kind of spoke about before, this is what it's able to solve for. And I looked at the clock and we have 4 minutes. So have there been any questions, Missy? I haven't seen any come through. It doesn't look like it. Well, we have a great resource. It's a questionnaire that could get you kicked off on going through this process, along with the presentation. Missy, if it's okay, potentially we could share that with them as well. Just to speak about Axiom and who we are and our commitment to our clients. Anytime a cemetery agrees to engage with Axiom, there's a couple of things that I want to just share that we promise. We promise an on-time project delivery. We promise to give you a price quote that's guaranteed, so there's no variability in it, which is huge because a lot of times whenever you're going through an implementation or a conversion of systems, any external partner you may use may charge you by the hour, and it's just very hard to budget on a contract that is by the hour. We don't want to do any of that. I mean, if it's going to take as much effort as it needs, and we may lose money because we're giving you more resources, but at the end of the day, we just want to give you something that's easy for your finance and your board to approve. So we give you a guaranteed proposal. We're there for you long term. We literally want to make sure that your success is reminiscent. You're able to provide a great reference for us if we ever need it. So we truly focus on you and make sure that the systems that we do put in place are being utilized correctly. And so we provide ongoing support after the implementation's done. And again, we truly believe that this system is the best technology that's out there. But again, your ideal solution is your ideal solution. And we truly love to be a part of that discovery process to kind of walk through this exercise with you, because it gives us ideas on how we could then improve our technology and maybe satisfy something that's a dream for you, and we can make it a reality. So with that, that's all I had to cover. I think should have 2 minutes early. How about that?
Nice job, Joel. Should we leave it open for just another few seconds to see if anybody has any questions they want to submit? And if not, we'll let them go.
Sounds good to me.
All right. I don't see any coming in, so we will go ahead and wrap it up. And Joel, thank you so much for your time today. And we hope that you all will join us again for future webinars. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.
Great. Thanks, Missy.